Defending Israel with David Harris on JBS is made possible in part by a generous gift in memory of Eric and Mira J. Spector, the Paul and Lynn Late Family Foundation, To Life, to Love, Barbara and Bob Goodkind, the Patricia Worthen Ullman Foundation,
Hello JBS viewers, I'm David Harris, and this is Defending Israel. Israel's 24/7 obsessed, relentless critics don't want you to know a little secret. Israel is one of the most open, diverse, pluralistic, multicultural societies, not only in the Middle East, but perhaps on Earth. And I'm honored today to speak with two representatives of that open, diverse, pluralistic, multicultural community in Israel, Avidor Baruch and Yaniv Jember, both of whom are with us from Tel Aviv. Let me begin with you, if I may, Yaniv. Tell us a little bit about your family story, because it's a story that, frankly, most American Jews don't really know much about. It's a remarkable story. It's a story of tenacity and faith and commitment. And in the move to Israel, a story of courage and hope and promise. Talk to us personally about your own family and their journey from Ethiopia to Israel, please.
First of all, thank you so much for having us. It is a pleasure to be here. It's great to be here with my friend Avidor, who I know for many years. And it's a beautiful thing that we can do it to show the strength of the Jewish community, both in Israel and in America. So it's an honor. So thank you very much for that. I will start by saying about the Ethiopian community that, it's the story starts in the highlands of Ethiopia, very remote places in the northern part of Ethiopia, where the community really cherished the Jewish tradition for many centuries. And it was isolated far from any other Jewish communities for a long time. And this is the story of my parents. It's a story of longing to come to Israel. For many years, they call it Jerusalem. And they were praying to come to Israel for many years. My dad grew up in a small town, in a small village called Seremle, which is close to Gondar. And he come from a very humble beginnings. They were very poor. But he always had the belief and the dream to come to Israel. He was very smart as a student. He was able to advance in education quite faster than the rest of the students. And he decided at the age of 23 that he's going to come to Israel. And when he decided that, he basically fabricated documents and tricked the authorities that he's going to come to Lebanon to study medicine, but is actually trying to get a passport to come to Israel. So after many trials that he tried to do it, and it was a lot of bureaucracy, as you can imagine, in a third world country, he was able to get the passport. And then once he got the passport, he talked with his brother who worked at the Ethiopian Airlines at the time, and he was able to get a visa to come to Israel. So when he had all the papers, he smuggled into a fishing boat, and he had to go through a very long voyage from Ethiopia to Israel in a fishing boat for 8 days, which he recalls a very difficult journey to come to Israel this way. But the challenges didn't end there. When he came to Israel, he wasn't still yet recognized as a Jew. And he went to a secular kibbutz, and he realized quite fast that this is not for him. He's very religious and observant, and he switched to a religious kibbutz. And he had to go through a strict conversion for 6 months and until he was able to obtain his ID. And right after that, it was the Yom Kippur War in 1973. And he fought in the Yom Kippur War as a combat soldier. And this was his story as he came to Israel. And my mother had a slightly different story because she came up from a Wolof family. She grew up close to the capital city of Addis Ababa. And her whole journey was orchestrated by her uncle, Yona Bugale, who was a prominent figure in the Ethiopian community who helped many Jews to come from Ethiopia to Israel. And at the age of 19, in 1978, there was a war going on between Ethiopia and Eritrea. And they were able to be part of a program that Ethiopia gave Jews to Israel, and Israel gave arms to Ethiopia in exchange. So her whole journey was orchestrated by her uncle, who's working with the Jewish Agency to bring Jews from Ethiopia to Israel. As the violence got worse and worse in Ethiopia, the tension arose. They had to find a quick way to flee all the Jews out of Ethiopia. So this way, she was able to get from Ethiopia. They made a quick stop in Kenya, and then they came to Israel. And she did it in the same day, left everything behind, and that way she made it to Israel and was reunited with her brothers and sisters in Israel.
And at some point, she met your father.
Yeah, so that's also, they had a very an unconventional story because, in Ethiopia, the way that you marry people is that you have a shidduch from the day you're born, and you're promised to someone. And they both were very young coming to Israel, and my dad was working as a Jewish instructor, as a Hebrew instructor to the New Olim. And that's how he met my mother, and they fell in love, which is also something that's not very conventional for most Ethiopian Jews. And they decided to get married, and they married, and then they had my older brother, and then me, and then I have another younger brother who's 11 years younger.
Absolutely fantastic story. And now we have another story, Avidor.
Right. It's my story and my parents' story. It's pretty much similar. I myself was born in Israel back in 1982. My parents came to Israel from Ethiopia as well. My father was born in 1945 in a small village. He was the son for a prominent Kessim family. Kes means a rabbi. And for his entire pretty much childhood, the dreams and stories about Jerusalem and how it would be there pretty much resonated with it, for him. And after graduating high school, he decided that he wants to make Aliyah to move to Israel. He somehow obtained a visa at the time where a tourist visa was pretty much something that you cannot do. And he came to Israel as a tourist. He served with the IDF right after Yom Kippur War, and then he went on to work for the IDF as a civilian employee for 48 years. My mother's story is pretty much the same as Yaniv's mother's story. She as well was born in Ethiopia in a small village not far away from my father's village. They both went to the same high school. And also for her, Israel and Jerusalem, that's something that you should aspire to and should aspire to come to. And she made the decision to move to Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, and find a way. She figured out that it probably would be a much easier journey from the capital city to obtain a visa and to come to Israel. At the time, it's pretty much was you cannot escape Ethiopia. And in the same deal where Israel exchanged arms for Jews, she came to Israel in 1977. After she came, she and my father actually met, rekindled romance, and got married in 1981. They had me in 82, a year after, and I have two other siblings, a sister, she's a deputy ambassador for Israel in Poland, and a brother who's currently resides in Washington, D.C., which is he's doing business development for the solar industry in the United States.
Absolutely incredible stories, and I'm so grateful to both of you for sharing them. Before we go forward, though, I want to ask a question which I suspect is on the minds of many of our JBS viewers. What is the historical connection between what you said earlier Yaniv, was an isolated community, and the Jewish religion, the Jewish faith. Where did the two converge in history? How did this all begin?
Yeah, sure. So the historians that have studied the Ethiopian community for many years, what they realized is that there is two paths that could have happened. So either it's from the descendants of Queen Sheba, and everyone knows the story of Queen Sheba and Solomon, who they had their kids, and from that the whole lineage started from there. But there's another more historian story that people resonate with, that's from the descendants of the Dan tribe. So when the temple was destroyed, the Jews were scared all over the world, and then part of that Dan tribe actually got to Ethiopia, and from there is all the lineage that started from there. And in terms of the history of the Jewish community in Ethiopia, there is it goes back to the 13th century, where you have papers that really describe different rabbis from other communities that are in touch with the community in Ethiopia. There is people who are travelers that are speaking about the Jews in Ethiopia. So it's a really long history of a community that was very distant from everything. And the thing about the Ethiopian community also that people don't realize, that we believe that we were the only Jews left on earth. And when the white Jews came to Ethiopia, they didn't know there was such a thing as a white Jew. So they were afraid to let them into the community. So when they started when the formation of Israel started, and the rabbis were starting to get in touch with communities around the world, they got in touch with the community in Ethiopia. And Rabbi Fetelovich was the one to lead the study of the Ethiopian community. And he sent he himself came to the community. So when he came to the community, first of all, the Jews in Ethiopia told him, you have to prove that you're Jewish. And they tested him on certain traditions to make sure that he's a Jew before they're going to let him in. So for us as Jews in Ethiopia, we didn't know that there's other communities that are around the world. But once we realized that, it became a mission that went from generation to generation to start talking about the longing to come to Israel. They realized there is a real option to come for Israel. And the beginnings of it starts in the 19th century, actually, the beginning of the 19th century, up until 1948, and later on the 70s and 80s, and all the missions that were happened later.
Again, a story that I'm not sure that every JBS viewer knows, but all of us should know. I suspect our viewers are also wondering, your English is impeccable, both of yours, and very Americanized. As someone connected to Brandeis University myself, being a trustee of the university, any possible connection between the two of you and Brandeis University?
Yeah. So go ahead. I wanted to, first of all, both of us went, got the Fulbright scholarship to come to the United States and study at Brandeis. Myself, I went to study 2 years at Brandeis as a graduate in the International Business School. So, that's how I got my accent, but also, I can say thanks to American TV.
Well, I don't hear the Boston accent, but I hear a beautiful Americanized English, and I'm very proud of your connection both to Brandeis University. Let me tell our viewers that my first visit to Ethiopia and to the Gondar province, which both of you mentioned, where many of the Jewish villages were, opened my eyes in a way that I couldn't possibly have imagined, both to the isolation and in many cases the poverty in which the Jewish villages lived, but also the extraordinary faith. I was there during the holiday of Sigid, and I joined with the Kesim, the rabbis, as you said, Avidor, as they climbed the tallest mountain or hill in the region, in a way trying to replicate Mount Sinai and the receiving of the Torah and the celebration of the Torah. And I also saw, as someone involved in Operation Moses, the risks that many Ethiopian Jews took and the price that some paid in order to leave Ethiopia, which was then run by Colonel Mengistu, an avowed communist, and escape the persecution of many Jews in order to reach this both mythical and real Jerusalem. And here we have examples of stories that fulfilled that vision. And rabbis and educators who are watching, why aren't we telling this story in our Jewish schools, in our day schools, in our after schools? Why aren't we telling these stories from the Bima, in the synagogues, as part of our collective history and part of the inspiration we need for the Jewish journey, and as another element in this extraordinary mosaic called the Jewish people? So let me now ask you, gentlemen, if we can move forward to October 7th and beyond. First of all, Avidor, where were you on October 7th? Were you in Israel or out of the country at the time? What were your first reactions to the news?
Well, it was Saturday. I was with my daughter at my parents' house. It was Simchat Torah. So we were pretty much asleep at that time, 6:30 a.m. Sirens started, and we thought it was, pretty much the same as it was before, years before, where you had missile being launched at Ashdod, and then there is a Iron Dome was going to intercept it. But it kept on and on and on. And at that time, I thought, after an hour, it's like when it's actually going to stop. So I, opened my phone and I see the videos out of Sderot where terrorists were on the streets of Sderot. That's something that you cannot see and believe. And fear, started to arise because you have your parents who are elderly, and I have my daughter with me. So, what do we do at that time? I mean, are they going to come from Sderot to Ashdod, or are they going to move, more and more? Because you've seen and hear from the news the horrific interviews on the news of how people, at their apartments being locked up, and terrorists are banging the doors. It was completely terrifying. I mean, just thinking about that morning. And to me, that's something that really struck, because that's something we did not believe it actually could happen. That's the worst nightmare.
Very understandably. Yaniv, where were you on October 7th? Were you in Israel?
Yeah, I was in Israel, and I was at a friend's place, and I remember we start hearing sirens, and immediately we went to the shelter, and we thought it's just something that's going to end quickly, and it's going to be like the rockets coming into Israel. Iron Dome is going to intercept them, and that's going to be the end of it. But we quickly realized that it is a very different situation. And then the news, it was a lot of confusion, because they were saying people infiltrated into Israel, and then they start saying the numbers, and then it kept growing and growing, and we couldn't understand what is going on. We'd never experienced anything like that before. There were people dying. There were people killing. They're attacking. They're attacking the southern part of Israel, and we were shocked. We couldn't believe our ears, because it was so different than anything that we ever experienced before. And there was one of my friends that was there, that her son was in the army and was called for the operation, and we felt helpless. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know how long it's going to take. We didn't know the extent of the horrific things that happened. So it took several days, because the army they had to gather all the information so they can release it to the public. So we were looking for information constantly. We were going through all the channels. It was because it was so shocking, the news coming up, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. And you go from this to the social media to understand when is it going to end? When is the end of it? Because we'd never experienced anything like that, and it's truly a second Holocaust that we were going through, and seeing this, it was hard to imagine, and it was devastating, and it was heartbreaking, as more news came out, it just painted a very dark picture of what happened for many people that were simple civilians.
Absolutely. And Yaniv, you used the word shock as one of your first reactions. And certainly for many of us, there was then a second shock, which came afterwards, and that was the reaction of many in the world who, rather than understanding, as you said, that this could be a second Holocaust, immediately turned the tables and began to blame Israel for its very existence, for being a white, racist, colonialist state committing genocide. We saw this behavior from the United Nations. We saw the indifference of the Red Cross. We saw many countries from South Africa to Turkey to Spain to Chile turn against Israel. And of course, here in the United States, we saw these encampments, these protests that took over many universities. Fortunately, did not take over Brandeis, but many other universities did. What was your reaction to their reaction? And if I may ask, if you had the chance to stand in front of them and say a few words, what would you be telling them? It's a question to both of you, but perhaps Yaniv, I'll start with you.
Yeah, when the narrative started to change and be manipulated against the state of Israel, I took it really hard, because I knew that there is something that's being injected into the minds and brainwashing people to believe that Israel is a place, and that people trying to paint it completely different than what it is. My parents were longing to come to this country. They are Black Jews, and they had their challenges, but they thrived in this country. And this country is made up of 50% of it is people coming from Arab countries and in African countries. So it was shocking to me, especially to listen to Black people talk about Israel and LGBT people talking about Israel, because this is part of I'm both Black and part of the community, of LGBT community. And it was incredibly frustrating for me to listen to this, because it is simply not true. It is simply, you just don't know the reality of Israel. And if they only had visited Israel, they realize it's a pluralistic place where everyone get the same rights. And speaking about apartheid, that sounds ludicrous. How can you even compare what happened in South Africa to the state of Israel? It's basically people being brainwashed. And that's, I start writing about it. I created Buna, which we will talk about later, because I realized that this is something that has to be shown to all these people who don't understand the reality of Israel. And I think the narrative, they're trying to paint Israel as a white colonialist country, they're missing. They're just trying to hurt Israel. It's basically anti-Semitic. It's not, the stem of it is anti-Semitic. It's not because this is what they truly believe. So we have to fight, and we have to fight hard by showing them through our stories and through who we are that this is not the case.
And I want to come to that organization Buna in a moment, but first, love to hear from Avidor. What was your reaction to their reaction, and what's your message to them, to the Israel haters?
I was also in shock to hear the day after, October 8th, the message that came out of Harvard universities and other elite universities in the United States and other countries as well, where the blame was, immediately put on the victim, the Israelis. I mean, just, experiencing October 7th, the day after, to hear that you're the blame of all that, the blame of all this death is on you, on our citizens, on our country. That was shocking. I know there is anti-Semitism in the world. We've seen it during the second Intifada, where anti-Israel became anti-Semitic. But I think at this time, it really came into new heights. And I felt the urge to come out and speak, hearing representatives from all around the world, people on the streets chanting from the river to the sea, and other slogans as well. and basically calling for the extermination of all Israelis, and I mean Israelis, not just only Jews, everybody here. It seemed to me that something that needs to be done, and we need to come out and say something about it and hear our voices. And I wanted to basically echo my story here of who I am, where I came from, who are my parents, and that's something that I wanted to do, and that's something we do with Buna. But yeah, that's sums it up.
That's why your testimonies are so powerful and so needed right now. So we have just a few minutes left, and I want to turn back to Buna. First of all, what does the word mean in Amharic?
Yeah, so when we realized the situation, we figured, how do we gather people together? And we echoed this message of Israel's a diverse place, Israel for what it is. And Buna in Amharic, it means the coffee ceremony where people gather around and they talk about everything freely. And we thought this is a beautiful way to let people see the Ethiopian community and see Israel through us. So we chose the name Buna, and the initiative. What we're doing is we're first of all we're trying to promote empathy. We're trying to debunk misconception and confront prejudice against Jewish communities worldwide, including Israel. And what we wanted to do is the twist we're trying to do is to focus on 10% of the problem and to focus on diverse communities instead of trying to tackle the whole 100% of the population. And we believe that through telling our stories, we can create shared values that we as Ethiopian Jews have experienced in Israel of growth and inclusion and acculturation. And we want to find similar communities in the US, diverse communities, with whom we can share the same ideas.
Avidor, would you like to add something about Buna and what the goals are in our remaining 2 minutes?
Yeah, I think, the one message that I do want to convey to Jews in the United States and other parts of the world is to remember who we are, and then how many Jews came to Israel and why Israel is so important, and focus on the stories of why we came here and how the Jews remained in this world and able to survive in a hostile world for two millennia, basically. And to figure out that, all the lies, really, and the prejudice around Jews and around Israel is pretty much lies at the end of it. And we need to educate ourselves of who we are, the multicultural environment that we do have here, educate others. And I think that's going to do a lot in the fight against anti-Semitism.
So, gentlemen, I'm sure many viewers will say, how can I learn more about Buna? Is there a website? Is there a contact point? What's your answer?
Yeah. So, first of all, in terms of what we're doing, we have a social media page that's called Buna Talk IL, and we also are on Spotify as BunaCast, and you can find us this way. And the third thing we wanted to do, which is a call of action that I would like to make here, is we're planning to organize small delegations of a few people that comes to Ethiopia, people like us that have a thriving story, to tell the story of a thriving Jewish Ethiopian community in Israel and to show the diversity of Israel. And we will be happy to partner with people who resonate with our message, who want to partner with us. So this is the way to do it.
So Buna is spelled B-U-N-A?
Yeah, Buna, B-U-N-A, Talk, T-A-L-K-I-L.
And you are Yaniv Jember, and you are Avidor Baruch. Viewers, please remember those names. Please remember the organization Buna. Please remember that this is an answer, by the way, to those in America who are trying to racialize the conflict. People like Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush in the Congress who are trying to tell us this is about a white society oppressing a non-white society. And it's folks like Avidor and Yaniv who have the absolutely perfect answer. and indisputable proof that that's all complete and total rubbish. So, gentlemen, unfortunately our time is up. I'm grateful to both of you for speaking to us from Tel Aviv. JBS viewers, thank you for being with us on Defending Israel. I'm David Harris, and I look forward to being with you again next week.